Hello, I'm Merrick Masters, and I'm here to provide an update on the UAW's organizing campaign among the top non-union auto producers in the United States. Today, the focus is on an update on the federal court-appointed monitor's investigation of the United Auto Workers. The monitor issued a motion that it filed before the federal court on July the 8th to enforce the compliance with its request for material that the UAW provide to conduct its investigations. There are several investigations pending before the monitor now. One is an investigation into the United Auto Workers President and Secretary Treasurer involving competing charges of financial misconduct and retaliation. A second is an investigation into the UAW President and International Vice President, one of the International Vice Presidents, involving allegations of inadequate performance and retaliation. A third is a separate investigation into an unnamed regional director on allegations of embezzlement. A fourth is investigation into the UAW's compliance with the monitor's request for production of documents to investigations of the above-mentioned case. The monitor and the union have a different view as to how and what the union is required to disclose to the monitor, and they are competing with that in terms of their cases before the federal judge. At now, the investigations are in progress, and my commentary here provides no suggestion one way or the other as to the guilt or innocence of any of the parties named specifically in the charges and countercharges. This is a little bit more detail about the investigations directly from the monitor's motion filed on July 8th that I referenced above. A timeline provides you with some insight as to the progress of developments which have led to this situation. On February the 20th of this year, the UAW's International Executive Board heard a report from the Compliance Director on alleged financial misconduct of the Secretary-Treasurer and voted to reassign several functionary areas of the union to under the Secretary-Treasurer's jurisdiction to other parts of the union, including the President's office. Shortly thereafter, the Secretary-Treasurer filed charges against the President for retaliation. On February the 29th, the UAW Federal Monitor launched an investigation into allegations against the President and Secretary-Treasurer. On April the 24th, the UAW Federal Monitor launched an investigation into allegations of embezzlement against an unnamed UAW Regional Director. On May 29th, the UAW President reassigned the Stellantis Department's function from one of the International Vice Presidents to his office based on charges of inadequate performance. Shortly thereafter, the International Vice President filed retaliation charges against the UAW President. On June the 10th, the Federal Monitor issued the 9th status report criticizing in part the UAW for delaying production of documents requested to investigate the conduct of the parties in association with the charges made. On June 18th, the UAW leadership met with the Federal Monitor and the U.S. Attorney's Office to discuss delays over production of requested documents. It appears that they were not able to reach an agreement over the UAW's assertion of pre-production review of documents in order to determine their privilege and confidentiality. On July the 3rd, the UAW filed a motion in federal court requesting clarification of interpretation of privilege and confidentiality. On July the 8th, the Federal Monitor filed its motion aforementioned to enforce the consent decree to compel production of documents from the UAW. And on July 10th, the UAW Federal Monitor issued its 10th status report, updating on investigations and focusing on results of a recent internal audit cultural assessment. In my next episode of this, which will come next week, I will go into that 10th status report. I have concerns about the nature of the report as it pertains to the monitor's oversight of union activities, and I'll relay those concerns in that report. So far, the monitor has said that pre-production review by the union has stalled the union's production and the monitor's investigations. The monitor and the union communicated concerning this position for several weeks as the monitor made efforts to work cooperatively. This is from the monitor's July 8th filing. But the monitor's attempts to garner the union's cooperation were unsuccessful to date. And this is with respect to the investigation of the President and Secretary Treasurer's situation. 116,000 plus documents have been identified by search items as necessary to be turned over to the monitor. The union has produced close to 71,000 of those documents. The monitor goes in a little bit more detail about the need for an enforcement agreement, and it voices its concern about the lack of communication between the UAW and the monitor and the evolution of this situation. Noting here again that despite repeated efforts and requests, the union has not provided such access to union documents for the investigation, and that has stalled the monitor's work. Therefore, the monitor requests enforcement of the consent decree required to enable the monitor to complete investigations in a timely manner. It held again in a little bit more detail about the delay that has occurred. And here reports in a little bit more detail about the progress in terms of delivering material, noting that in the case of the regional director's investigation on the allegations of embezzlement against an unnamed regional director, that the union has produced only 1,600 of the more than 10,000 documents requested. The enforcement request of the union includes two parts. First, the order that they're requesting, declaring that the monitor has direct and immediate access to documents, including privileged documents, is necessary to effectuate the terms of the consent decree, and that the monitor also requests an order specifically directed at the existing documents so that the monitor can complete those investigations. An order compelling the union to produce the requested documents according to the monitor in the July 8th filing would enforce the terms of the consent decree by allowing the monitor access to the documents needed to complete the work. This is an update on the situation regarding the current investigations of the President, Secretary, Treasurer, and a regional director, and also the underlying investigation about the union's compliance. Next week, I will provide a report and update on the UAW Organizing Watch that deals with the 10th status report of the monitor. It's important, I think, that this coverage take place under the rubric of the UAW Organizing Watch, because how this situation is resolved is so important to the UAW's ability to present itself to prospective members in organizing campaigns given the realities of this investigation and the impact that it might have on prospective members and voters in certification elections, views on the UAW as a desirable representative. This is a little bit of information about myself. I hope you've enjoyed this update, and I look forward to speaking to you next week with my report on the 10th status report dealing with the internal audit cultural assessment of the UAW, in which I'll mention some of the concerns I have about the scope of the monitor's report in terms of its criticism of the UAW's occupation, obligations, and activities. Thank you, and I look forward to talking with you then.